the big thing that we're seeing from our customers is the ability to deploy and redeploy inventory and capacity into different geographical areas. We're seeing new business models evolve with powered by companies like Shopify, of like the flash sale models and all these different things that put very, very different constraints on supply chain compared to the traditional retail distribution model, which was big box retail, just ship out cases of purple Gatorade to everybody. This is a flash sale model. It's a limited inventory model, or it's a regionalized inventory model where now, because the inventory is getting closer and closer to the consumer, to reduce those transportation lead times, precisely that dependency, the real urgency is about being able to flex up and flex down that capacity as needed. And to your point, the last mile parcel, which really has become the constraint that we've seen now in the last couple months, where everybody's expecting their deliveries at the same time, and there just isn't enough capacity in the network to be able to support that. So, you know, I think that will certainly, these regionalized inventories will help that to an extent. Also, trends around buy online, pick up at store, or buy online, pick up curbside, I think will also help. So we're going to see micro fulfillment really pick up and enable these types of things. Some people may remember the old service merchandise model where you would place the order and the store was a warehouse, but they would bring you your items directly to the counter. And that's effectively, I think, what we're going to start seeing more of. And automation has a big piece to play there.
That's a great point, Vinny, that, you know, in the midst of this sort of terrible period of time when we were all experiencing this sort of probably the biggest existential, you know, disruption that anybody, you know, unless you're 90 years old and you kind of experienced the Second World War that we've experienced. No, you're seeing terrible things, but you're also seeing, you know, humans rise to the challenge. Many humans rise to the challenge, doing incredible things, and then collectively, many companies doing incredible things. And I suppose the sort of overriding sensation I have at the moment is many people will know that line from William Gibson that the future is here, it's just unevenly distributed.
That's a great.
It almost feels like the future's more broadly distributed, more evenly distributed at the moment. And what we're seeing is that a lot of kind of leading edge technologies, a lot of leading edge methodologies, even just you know, the way many people have sort of lived our life working remotely. This is very normal for us, isn't it? And the rest of the world is catching up in a way. It's kind of surprised me, you know, what's taken people so long to figure out that this is a, you know, I certainly feel, you know, far more preferable way to live and work out of my house, travel a lot, but when I'm not traveling, I'm here. So we're kind of being accelerated into the future in a way. And in terms of those heroics, we're having to do work that perhaps, you know, in normal times might have taken 3 months or 6 months. We're having to do it in 3 weeks or 6 days in some situations. I mean, in Cognizant, clearly we have a lot of people working in India, and the norm there was to go into a facility, to go into an office. With the lockdown, we had to kind of pivot and suddenly move 70, 80,000 people out of that kind of environment and into a work at home environment. So the logistical challenge of doing that was extraordinary. And obviously many businesses have had to do a version of that, not just in India and other parts around the world. I mean, in terms of some of the client work that we've done, one big project we've helped with a company in the UK called Sensodyne Health, which is a health kind of R&D and medical development organization. And we've helped them, working with Microsoft, on developing a contact tracing app, which is being broadly kind of rolled out across the UK. And I think there's an ambition to kind of roll that out internationally. So again, taking methodologies, Agile, Scrum, et cetera, which have been sort of permeating into our business, but perhaps were still the exception, not the norm, very, very quickly pivoting those, scaling those, making those the norm in terms of being able to develop a solution much more quickly. And I think that's going to be a kind of a rallying cry for a lot of people going forward, figuring out that we can do things more, more rapidly than perhaps has been the norm. That will be a good thing that comes out of this whole experience. And then just one other example I'd mention, Vinnie, a retailer back down in Australia, not one I cannot unfortunately name, but probably be a little bit obvious, but again, helping them with the logistics on their back end. And as you sort of pointing to, trying to deploy RPA solutions into that supply chain in a more material way than had been done previously, where previously that had been a kind of a pilot, a relatively limited exploration of the potentiality there. This has been, we've got to do this. We've got a burning platform. We've got to deploy this because there's no other way to do this. And that's been very successful, and the clients kind of really had their eyes opened, if you like, to what they could potentially do, if we ever get back to normal, as a kind of new, better option that's available to them.
So probably around 26 partner firms, 11,000 individuals. They're instrumental in our customer experience.
Right.
And I think at Workday, we're really proud. You and I have talked about this before, about how we work with our partner ecosystem, the collaborative nature of that, right? The tools that we provide, the sessions that we have with them to share best practices and ensure that they're delivering at the highest quality on behalf of our customers. And I would say that hasn't faltered at all during the pandemic. They have been great about also shifting to complete virtual deployments. We have developed, best practices and lessons learned across our team, and again, share that out to all the partners to ensure that we were helping them as much as possible. But they've delivered, across all industries, all sizes of customers. I think that what I've seen is more creativity, not just in how you're deploying, right? So now that you've shifted, you used to do in-person design sessions, right? And those are on Zoom, and they've been creative in ensuring that they're keeping customers engaged and they're still sussing out global requirements as necessary, right? I think that's table stakes. What I've seen them do a really great job on, though, that's been really impressive, is more tooling. So how do they ease the burden of data conversion for customers? And I think the thing that I'm really proud of is that they're using that to drive savings in the deployment costs and pass those on to customers, which is great for everyone, right? Customers are generally, most are constrained.
I've been screaming about that for a long time, so that's great to hear.
So really great ETL tools. We have, partners in the medium enterprise space that could take a file from, a legacy system the customer's deprecating and immediately load that into Workday. The other thing that we've been really focused on is developing pre-configured content. So continuing to invest in those libraries and now making them specific to industry. So healthcare pre-configurations versus government pre-configurations. And that's gone really well in terms of the uptake of those. The other thing that I've seen, I would say 3 things from customers in terms of how they've gotten through the deployments at this point is some customers have slowed down and elongated their deployment. Some of our really large customers that are possibly faced with financial constraints. They haven't stopped, but they've said, okay, we're going to elongate it because if it's an HR transformation, our HR professionals are pretty stressed right now. So they've elongated it. More customers have accelerated their deployments. And they said, let's just try to get live sooner. We really need to understand the skills of our organization. So let's try to do that in a compressed time frame to get live quickly because they're seeing the benefits of a cloud solution right now. And then the third thing is that I've seen customers take on more roles in a deployment that were typically staffed by systems integrators, meaning, hey, we're not going to outsource this. We're going to use our own people to do these tasks that we typically pay for. Yep. And those last 2 trends are ones that I really want to stick when we come out of this, right? Faster deployments and more self-sufficiency from.
Another analyst said recently that the new normal is really going to be companies' ability to adapt to a crisis. And this will not be the last crisis. And every crisis, no matter how we prepare for it, will take a different shape. And some companies practice this as a way of life. For example, IBM had a pandemic plan that they practiced over and over and over that enabled them to get 100,000 workers online over a weekend. So that's a great example of a company, ready to go. You've also seen plenty of companies declaring bankruptcy who didn't make the full commitment to digital transformation. I think that's the key. Like, if you just put up a website or a commerce site or say, we're going to have everything on a computer, that's not enough. You have to change your business model to have digital at the center. Because if you think about it, 15 years ago, most companies had the HR department and the finance department using some kind of business application. That was it. And today, business application is the fabric of the company. So when I look at our customers, companies like Westpac in Australia, we had just signed a contract with them when I arrived in February. 3 weeks later, the pandemic hits. They had a 3-month rollout plan that we had to accelerate to 5 days. And because they were organized to deal with this kind of crisis, we were able to get the rollout done. They could see immediately that they needed dramatically more VPN capacity. We're able to get that ordered and installed in a matter of days. Companies who waited even a week longer, it took months to get that VPN capacity. So for me, it's all about, are you ready for change? And that change could be, I'm improving a business process, or I'm reacting to a financial crisis or a pandemic. But if I have my company, always thinking that way, I'm going to be able to handle whatever you throw at me.
It's funny. There's always an acronym that pops out in crisis.
Thanks, Gartner. I've created a few.
I remember your acronyms, Vinnie, from Gartner days. I think it was introduced by, I heard it first time at an Asian conference by the Carlyle Group, and how they select investments. But their point was that there are certain aspects of technology that are accelerating right now. So they were looking at digital, and they were looking at which part of digital technology is actually helped by the challenges of the crisis. Not so much solving crisis problems, but what I just talked about, crisis compresses time. And so they talked about 5 C's initially. I think there is now 6 or 7 in my conversations, but it's going back some of the basics like e-commerce. So that's, drop the E, right? So commerce. So commerce is one of the C's. And commerce, we all know because we're at home, it has a brand new life. It's not a new technology. Commerce has been around for 5-10 years at mainstream. Cloud conversion. I still can't believe we're talking in 2020 about cloud conversion, but I've seen companies that would never go cloud. Financial services, they would never go cloud. Now they're migrating to the cloud. I was at SAP, right? So there were customers we tried to convince back in the day. Now they're converting. Collaboration technology, we're all living this, but it's not just Zoom. I think that's the third C it's all kind of collaboration, whether it's online whiteboards to project management systems, because we're not at home. And I think that a lot of the innovation just happens around the edges of these tools. They probably had the functions, features, the people never had to use it. So collaboration tools, I think the investors are talking about investing in them, but I also see a huge uptick. Cybersecurity. It's cybersecurity. We thought we're robust, and now we have this massive breach right now. I think cybersecurity is one of the areas what I thought has this silent introduction of AI. I think rule-based cybersecurity is out. I think AI is getting introduced, pattern recognition, machine learning, and pattern recognition and neural networks. I think the war is going to be the wars of machines when it comes to cybersecurity. But that's a 4C. And the 5th C is sort of a 4th C is a cashless. So fintech, right? So Bitcoin went from 10,000 to 20,000. But that's just always a symptom of what's happening in fintech is there's a general shift back to blockchain projects. There's a general shift on non-blockchain payment systems. I think Klarna now, it's funny. It's one of our investors investing in Klarna. Now I see Klarna in every checkout, financing online orders. I don't remember seeing them a year ago, right? So there's a new set of players that get introduced in this wave, which investors invest in, but they only invest in it because there's a general demand for all these products. So these were the 5 C's the investors talk about. I actually think about a 6th C, which is connectivity, and connectivity in all aspects. So it's not just 5G and IoT, but connectivity applications. So it's again another area I can't believe we're talking about middleware, right? But But in this environment where IT departments will not be there to solve every problem, you see this massive wave of applications to application connections that are microservices, that are smaller scale. I know it's very technical, but in a way that's going to make all the digital work, digital islands to have connectivity capability. And of course, telco is part of that with 5G. So those are the 5 C's. Or 5 or 6 C's in my way. I actually think people talk about the 7 C's because why not? Let's say the 7 C's, and that's cognitive. I actually disagree. I think cognitive or AI is in everything. So you have AI in analytics, you have in commerce, you have the AI in cloud conversion. There are AI monitoring of networks. So I think it's 5 or 6 C's, and it's only just queued because it's checklists. So if you're driving, and I sit a lot with investors that are trying to formulate a strategy for a business, and they go through these lists and say, what are you doing in cloud? What are you doing? And they're betting on companies that take the leap and move forward in these areas versus companies that are laggards. And I think, I have a very strong conviction because I'm seeing this in our customer base as well and talking to investors. Companies that miss this digital upswing right now, and they say, digital is not for us, not a core competency, I think they'll lose big. Let me give you an example, which I think is sort of a small one, but we have a local restaurant. And you mentioned voice ordering, right? So conversational AI is a big thing now, and it's becoming mainstream. So but they developed their own Alexa skills. So you can actually have Alexa order from XYZ restaurant. And I was blown away because not a big restaurant chain. And I know endless IT organizations that still haven't created Alexa skills for their companies. So I think they're going to be great creative companies in industries like hospitality, which is really struggling, break ahead.
I've got 2 more C's for you. So one is contactless, right? A lot more contactless delivery, contactless payments. And especially now, I've been following the whole cold chain. The vaccine distribution, the Pfizer one at minus 70. I thought it was recent, but all year round during the pandemic, the whole food chain has depended heavily on refrigerated trucks and so on. I think there's going to be a lot more innovation around colder supply chains and so on. And we don't need more C's. 7 C's is good enough.
CEO of a company called Zenetta, which was an early guest on my podcast. On that call, I had Patrick Berglund, who's a CEO, and his business when the pandemic started, his product was actually only a year into the market, and what he's doing. He actually gone sort of the difficult route to market by making it really transparent what are the costs of all the routes for shipping containers around the world. So he's got companies like Nestle, Nike, Adidas, Puma, all those big names that are sending containers and containers around the world. And they were always in the disadvantage dealing with the shippers, because the shippers, they had this monopoly. You pay my price, otherwise your container is not going to get shipped. What they did with their solution is make it completely transparent, so that the price is like a market price, and then they can start thinking about long-term strategies. What happened there is that his business was really focused on those long-term things, and in one day, that whole long-term thing disappeared. So what he did, and what his team did, in 2 weeks' time, they pivoted, used elements of their components, elements of their solution, to come up with a go-to-market model which was more focused on the short-term type thing, where they needed a complete new data set. They work with their customers to get that data. And to give you an idea about, they've been building the solution for, I think, 2 or 3 years right now. It took them about a year to get to 2.5 million validation points, and then it took them a couple of months to get to 50 million. So once they got through that network effect, where they had a base of companies that were trusting them to provide them with their information, the buyers, then it really took off. And he used actually that momentum to get new data about short-term contracts and short-term shipping, and actually got a product to market in 2 to 4 weeks. He's the CEO of Immersion. They are creating technology to help organizations create high-performing teams. It's actually a wearable. And he's got a TED Talk, so people that listen to this podcast, check him out, Paul Zak on TED, because he did a TED Talk about what you can sense in people in terms of what their intent is and how they feel from a how do you say that? It's something that comes free from your brain, which you can sense with technology. So what he did, they actually already had some technology out there that they hadn't shipped, and it appeared at that point in time not really valuable. But it appeared really valuable when the pandemic hit the market, and it was technology where you can actually sense how your employees were feeling working from home. There's a psychological safety. With everything happening around them, like, for example, working from home with their family, and, for example, their wife got fired, and other things happened with family that got ill. So it does a lot with you. And, it does a lot with you also from a performance perspective and feeling in the right way your job. So with the technology, managers could touch upon, well, they actually started to do sort of stand-up meetings twice a day instead of once per day, and using the technology to really sense second by second, how are you feeling? And by sensing that, and sometimes people don't express it, they could sense, okay, something is wrong, pay attention to that, have that extra word with them, and see how you can help them go through that and be supportive with them. So really technology, first of all, not coming to market, then becoming really relevant, and then being able to ship that fast made a difference.